Hello and welcome to another pen video from me, Penultimate Dave. So I have another ink comparison video here, and this is Diamine ink comparison number 10. So I think with that, let's go and swab up some of these inks. So I get a lot of questions on how I do these ink videos. So I decided I would add this to the front of each of the ink videos. I put links in the description, but I know some of you watch this on TVs or mobile devices, so you don't get to see this. So first off, the paper is the number one question I get asked. What paper do I use for these ink comparison videos? So this is the original Tomoe River. This is 52 GSM, and it is the white, not the cream, the white. Where possible, I try to go for the white because the cream can actually change the color of the ink just a little bit. So this is Tomoe River 52 GSM in the white. A lot of people get confused as well because I have what looks to be a grid on this page, and it's actually an Oxford Optik pad. These are the pads that I actually use when I'm writing my writing samples for pen reviews or in my currently ink. So they have these little squares up here. I just use that because it's a good guide for me. When I put this very thin sheet of Tomoe River over, I can actually see squares, so it helps me write a little bit sort of straight on the page. Not always, but sometimes it does. The other thing that I also have is I have a bottle of water, plain water, and I dip my nib in here. So for consistency, I use the same fountain pen, or I guess it's not a fountain pen, it's using a fountain pen nib though. This is a 3D printed pen from William Shakour in the UK. So he prints this material 3D, and it has a number 8 size Bock nib which I can unscrew, and you can see there. So it is just a dip pen holder for a number 8 size Bock nib, and the idea is I want to have consistency with the writing sample. So I use this, I dip it in the ink, I write, and then I will dip it in here and I will rinse the nib off several times and I will dry it, and then at that point I will then go on to do the next ink swatch and the next writing sample. So there you have it. That's how I do my ink swatches. So I just wanted to show you that here. Now on to the ink comparison video. So the first ink here is Diamine Amazing Amethyst. So we'll do an ink swatch. And I have to say that this is quite an amethysty colour. Now you can see it does go a little bit lighter there. I'm going to do a second pass. People ask me why I do this. I'm only going to do it over the top half of that ink. And the reason being is that depending on how dry or wet a nib writes will depend on the colour that you see on the page. Likewise, if it is a fine nib, it will write lighter, and if it's a broader nib, it will write darker. So this is the reason why I do that. I know a lot of people ask me questions as to why I do a second pass. So this is Diamine. And it is amazing. And it's Amethyst. But that is quite a nice purpley ink. And you can see it really does differ between the dark and the light there, or the wet versus the dry. The next ink is Diamine Aurora Borealis. So we'll do an ink swatch. Now this is another ink that I haven't used before. So this is completely new to me. I have not inked this up at all in a pen. I'm going to do a second pass on the top half of the ink here, and that is just, again, just to show the difference between a wet versus a dry writing nib. So this is Diamine and it's Aurora, and it's Borealis. Which I'd have to say is quite a nice sort of teal coloured ink. I'm not normally into teal colours, however, I'd have to say that this does look quite nice. The next ink is Diamine Beau Blue. So we'll do an ink swatch, and this is an ink that has been on the Diamine range for a long time, and it's typically an ink that I've avoided. I don't know why, because this is quite a lovely light turquoisey blue. We'll do a second pass on the top half here just to make it look a little bit wetter. So this is Diamine, and it is Beau, it's actually an E, Beau Blue. But I'd have to say, if you're into turquoisey coloured inks or cerulean blue inks, then this is quite a nice colour. It'll be interesting to see how this one dries. The next ink here is Diamine Cerise. So we'll do an ink swatch, and this is quite an interesting sort of coral pink, I would say. We'll do a second pass again on the top half. So this is Diamine Cerise. But that actually is an interesting corally pink. The next ink is Diamine Emerald. So we'll do an ink swatch. And I haven't tried this ink either. This is all of these inks are actually new to me. But this one actually does remind me a little bit of Diamine Sherwood Green. I think it's probably a little bit lighter though. So this is Diamine. And it is Emerald. But that is quite a nice green actually. I have to say, I'm not normally into dark greens, but that could be a dark green that I might actually like to use more in my pens. And then the last ink here is Diamine Golden Brown. So we'll do an ink swatch. And this is an ink that I have used a lot, and I have to say it is an ink that I really do like. So we'll do a second pass over the top part just to make it look a little bit wetter. So this is Diamine, and it is Golden Brown. So let's take a look at these inks now they have dried. So we have Diamine Amazing Amethyst, and I have to say this is an interesting amethyst colour of ink. I'm not normally into an amethyst colour ink. I do have, I've forgotten the name of it now, but there's a J. Herbin ink with some glitter in it. And I do have that one. I've not written with it much lately. I typically like a purple ink rather than an sort of an amethyst or maybe even a violet coloured ink. I don't know why, it's just me. But you can see here the difference between a wet and a dry ink swatch here, or a wet versus a dry writing nib. You do have quite a bit of shading around the pulled areas there. Is there any sheen? No, there isn't, but it is an interesting colour ink, and I think it's an ink that a lot of people will probably like. The next one here is Diamine Aurora Borealis, obviously the lovely northern lights it's named after. So again, there's a difference between what a wet writing nib and a dry writing nib would actually write like. So if you had an extra fine or a fine nib, you're probably going to see this color. If you have probably a medium or a broad, or a stub, you're going to see this color most likely. But it does depend on how wet your nib and feed are as well. Now, there is quite a bit of a difference here in the color. There is quite a lot of shading going on as well. Is there any sheen on this ink? I want to say yes, there is. Around the edges here, I can actually see some sort of red sheen. It's not a huge amount. Actually, maybe there is some here as well in the darkened areas. It's definitely trying to sheen there. So yes, there is some sheen. It's not a huge amount. It's not something like Diamine Purple Rain or Diamine Majestic Purple or one of those inks that have, or even Diamine Skull and Roses that has a lot of sheen. But it does have a little bit of sheen. Are you going to see it in the writing sample? Probably not, but you will see it in some ink swatches. The next ink, which is an interesting ink that I've never tried before, like the Aurora Borealis, is Diamine Beau Blue. And this is an ink that Diamine have had in their range for quite some time. It is a very light blue, a very turquoisey blue. Is it a cerulean blue? Possibly not. I don't know. What's the difference between turquoise and cerulean blue? Do let me know what your thoughts are on that in the comments below. You can see quite a bit of difference between a wet and a dry writing nib there. There is a bit of shading going on there as well. It is a very, very light blue. Is there any sheen to this? No, I can't see any there. But it is a beautiful blue ink. And it may just be an ink that I will have to write with a little bit to start with and see if I like that in a number of different pens. The next ink here is Diamine Cerise, and this is a bit of a hot pink. It didn't go on this hot. this has actually turned into almost, I want to say, a neon pink. It really is a bright pink. There's not a huge difference between the wet and a dry. You can see where the ink is pulled, so there is some shading, not a huge amount, but there is some sheen as well. So around the edges here of those pulled areas of ink, you can see a little bit of, I want to say, gold, orangey gold sheen there. There isn't any in the writing sample, but there is in that ink swatch. So that's a very interesting hot pink. I don't have many pink inks, and I don't have many hot pink inks either. I guess the other pink I have, which is a very dark pink, is Pilot Washizuku Satsuji, which is a gorgeous ink, and that has some gold sheen to it. Or green. It's a greeny gold sheen. The next ink here is Diamine Emerald, and I'm not normally into dark green inks. This does remind me quite a bit of Diamine Sherwood Green, but I do think Diamine Sherwood Green is a little bit darker. There is quite a difference between what would be a wet and a dry writing nib. You can see where the ink is pulled, so there is shading going on there as well. Is there any sheen? No, I would say probably not. It's trying to sheen. There's certainly nothing in the writing sample there. And then the last ink here is Diamine Golden Brown. So there's a huge difference between the wet and the dry pass of ink. So difference between a wet and a dry writing nib. I have to say this is an ink that I have written with a lot lately since I got this bottle. And I might have to, I still have probably 90% of the bottle left, but I have consciously been re-inking this ink in a couple of pens, and I do like it. So I might have to buy either another 30ml bottle of this or perhaps an 80ml bottle. I really don't want any more 80ml bottles, but we'll see. We'll see. I think the 30ml actually is starting to make a lot more sense to me seeing that I have over 300 bottles of ink, and it's very closely approaching 400 bottles of ink. So there you have it. That's my Diamine ink comparison number 10 video. If you have any of these inks or like these inks, then do let me know in the comments below. Likewise, if there are any other inks you'd like me to take a look at, or other good comparisons to these inks, then do let me know in the comments below. So this is my Diamine inks comparison number 10 video. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next pen video. Bye bye.